Hello, this is Kevin with Matrix on behalf of our client Riogenesis, and I'm a developer for the Riogenesis app at riogenesis.com. This is our demo video for the Riogenesis app to show how the scopes we're requesting for this app will be used. As you can see here are the scopes we're requesting. We've got the non-sensitive scopes, user info email, user info profile, and drive.file. On the sensitive scopes, we've got the calendar read-only, the calendar events, and the drive scope for the Google Drive API. Now we'll go through to how our scopes, how each of these scopes will be used. Here's where users will request authorization for the app to use the scopes related to the calendar sync feature on Riogenesis. Here's the client ID as requested, and I'm just going to go ahead and use this account. Now this account has already given consent to these scopes in testing, but here's a summary of the consent given, and I'm just basically relinking this user's token to the user app here for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to confirm this. We go back to the user's profile page, and you can see that we've linked the Google account here, and this is where we're using the profile information, the name, the email, and the profile picture URL. Now we're going to go over to the calendar sync side. Now Rio does have its own calendar here, and what we're doing here is providing the opportunity for the Rio user to sync their Rio calendar events to a selected Google Calendar. So we've got an icon here to sync a selected calendar, and to sync a calendar, the user will click this icon here, which will trigger an API request to where the calendar events scope is used, because once the user has selected a Google Calendar to sync their Rio calendar to, we're going to loop through all their future Rio calendar events and create a new Google Calendar event for each. We're giving it an ID that corresponds to the equivalent Rio calendar event. So let me just show you how some of that is being used here. So we've got a utility function here. We're just using the Google PHP library that's used by some internal APIs that are React front-end calls. This is a utility function where we're going to set up the Google client auth and determine whether we've already stored the token for this user already or whether we need to request authorization. This is what we use to generate the OAuth URL we demonstrated earlier. If we haven't already stored the user's token, then we'll generate the URL. If we have used the token before, if we've stored it before, then we'll refresh it if needed, and return the Google client, saving the token info if we haven't saved it before. And then we've got another utility function here where basically we'll call this for each Rio calendar event that we'll wanting to be syncing to the Google Calendar event. We're passing in the event details and the Google Calendar ID in question. We're creating a new Google Calendar event, and then we're doing an insert function here. Now beyond this, we will regularly check whether the user has created or modified any Rio calendar events, and if so, we'll then create new events on the corresponding Google Calendar by calendar ID, as well as update any existing events by the event ID. That development isn't complete on this part yet, but we'll basically be doing the same thing as we've shown here, but doing an update rather than an insert. And then finally, for the calendar sync, if a user chooses to unsync a calendar, we'll have another icon here to unsync. We haven't, that's not displayed here because we haven't actually synced a calendar yet. But once a calendar is synced, there'll be another icon to unsync, and on that we will delete the events for the corresponding Google Calendar by event ID. Like I said, we don't have the unsync functionality complete yet, but we'll be using a similar approach. A similar approach as with the insert of the events, but we'll be using the delete instead of the insert. Now let's move on to the Google Drive scope that we're requesting. The Rio app provides the ability to compose emails with attachments, and here we're providing the ability to attach different kinds of documents, one of which is Google Docs. And so here we authenticate the user. If they're not already authenticated, it goes right to the okay, so here's the permissions specifically for Google Drive. I'm going to allow that. And that goes right to the Google Picker, where we'll select a file, and that will download the file and attach it to the email. And here's where we set up the functions in React to hit the Google JavaScript API library. We set up the credentials. We've got the authorization. We handle the auth result and create the picker. Again, we're just using the Google Drive, the Google JavaScript API library. So those are the scopes we're requesting and how they will be used, and we appreciate your consideration for this application request. Thank you.